Jara marana mokshaya mamashritya yatanti ye te brahma tadviduh kritsnam adhyatmam karma chakhilam. Jara marana mokshaya mamashritya yatanti ye te brahma tadviduh kritsnam adhyatmam karma chakhilam. Verses 26 to 30 are talking about how the wise seek and gain Brahman. So coming to the penultimate verse of the text is concluding those thoughts. Here he says, those who strive for liberation from old age and death, they take refuge in me. Ashritya. Ashritya means taking refuge. They realize in full. What do they realize? That Brahman, Adhyatma, and Karma they realize in full. Akhilam, the entirety, the essence, the crux, completeness of the connection between Brahman, Adhyatma, and Karma. So those who strive for liberation, themselves are very few. Many of us, most of humanity are striving, constantly striving and struggling, but sadly, we are not striving for liberation, but just to be of a different kind. You would be of a different kind if you switch the goal from worldly pursuits to the goal of self-realization. Just to even that statement, Jara Marana Mokshaya, all of us have to go through Jara and Marana. All of us are subjected to go through these 5 changes of disease, decay, and death. All of us are going to die. All of us are going to be subjected to disease, a matter of little early or later. I may be celebrating today that there's no disease, but it will be very soon impending. So let's not hatch your chickens too early. It will come. It will come. Gayatri, it will come. What? No. Are you against the Shastra? The Shastras are saying, Jara, Marana. It is the 5 metamorphic changes every human has to go through. There's birth, there's growth, there's disease, there's decay, there's death. We can't escape it. But most of the people, in fact, mass of humanity are subjected to this cycle of birth and death. They are subjected to the changes that these states bring about, and thereafter suffer the consequences of being subjected to change. How many of us can gracefully accept these changes, understanding they are inevitable aspect of life? In fact, so much so you must celebrate it. Oh, disease has come. It's time to celebrate. Why? It is a part and parcel of life. So you can't run away from it. How far can you run? Even the fastest runner in the planet can't run away from death, isn't it? When the time comes, when the appointed time comes, all of us have to go. So understanding how ephemeral and impermanent life is, a wise man strives for liberation. So he understands these bondages of life. He understands these metamorphic changes of life. He understands the impermanence of life, and he seeks the permanence. He seeks for liberation because he doesn't want to be subjected to the cycle of birth, growth, disease, decay, death. Why should I go through this cycle? It's like, all of us sat in the, what is that? When we go to this exhibitions, as a kid, all of us used to get excited with the giant wheel, isn't it? Now, what is the difference is nothing is changed. The same excitement, you go to London Eye. What is London Eye? The same. What is that I said just now? Huh? The big giant wheel, no? That's what I said, no? The giant wheel. You get excited. Sanjay, I know every weekend you go to London Eye. No, don't say no. Huh? But when I come to London, you'll take me to London Eye?
I'll take you to the London Eye. Yes.
Very good. So that one tourist spot is fixed. Guaranteed I'll go there. When you'll go to Singapore, what is he there? What is it called in Singapore, Vijaya? Same thing is there. Also will go round and round and round. What a checker, After a little while you get boring, monotonous, there's no meaning to it. So a wise man he doesn't want himself to be subjected through this continuous cycle of birth, growth, disease, decay, death. Now, all what these masters are saying is all of this is self-inflicted sorrow. You are inflicting this on yourself because you choose not to be liberated. You choose to be foolish. You choose to be bound by this cycle. You choose not to be wise. The wise man gets liberated. He calls that person as the jnani. The jnani gets liberated. Why? Because he has taken refuge in the self. He seeks the self. It's only a human being that can conceive the transcendental. The capacity to conceive the transcendental, only a human is blessed with. Now, let me begin by asking those whom I think they don't know. I could be wrong. But that doesn't make them any ignorant. It's just that my guess. What I'm saying is every human has this capacity to conceive the transcendental. The question is, it's only a human being. What is it in a human that conceives the transcendental reality? Venkatramji. So it doesn't mean you top the list of those who don't know. I just asking. There is no.
I don't know.
So my guess was correct.
Yeah.
You're sure? You gave up so easily?
Yeah, it is better. Otherwise, I would give some tangential answers. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. I respect that. Apparao Garu. ఏంటి మొత్తం పేరు చెప్పలేదని మౌనంగా ఉన్నారా ఏంటి?
Just trying to unmute, sir.
అయిపోయింది సార్, అన్మ్యూట్ ఎప్పుడో అయిపోయింది.
So in the name of multitasking, multiple screens come on, so I had to close them.
Right, sir. What all you're doing while attending the class, sir? You don't answer. Amma will answer from behind.
Okay. Yeah.
What all is doing on screen? Meer akkadi నుంచి చెప్పండి మా. You will speak the truth. I know. I don't believe Apparao garu.
No, he's not doing anything. I think some windows are popping up, so he's trying to close that.
Now I know you are an ideal couple. Chapan sir, what is it in a human that can conceive the transcendental reality?
So frankly speaking, I do not know, but I would like to try.
Please.
So, I feel that, about myself, self-introspection, what is right, what is wrong, basically improves the way I am living, and it also takes me to a higher levels.
So we are not talking of introspection. We are not talking of spiritual evolution here. What we are talking about, sitting where you are, the stage of your spiritual life where you are placed, you should be able to conceive the transcendental reality. I know you are able to, because without being able to conceive, you will not be in this satsang. The fact that you're here, you're able to. I'm only trying to give it a technical definition. I'm only giving it a specific name. What is it in you that conceives it? So you have the benefit of doubt. All of you have the benefit of doubt. You may not know what it is, but you have the benefit of doubt, because the fact that you're here, you have it. If you're not, one who doesn't have it will not be here, will not be seeking it.
So is it self?
In fact, the question is, what is it that can conceive the self? That's the question. What is it that conceives the self?
I don't know, sir.
No problem, sir. Absolutely fine. I respect that. Pushpama. ఇదేంట్రా నన్ను అడిగారు అనుకుంటున్నారు. I can read Pushpama's mind completely. Ma, could you please unmute yourself, please? Yeah.
It all depends on the mind only, I think, and it is also mental readiness to go through all this.
I don't think it is the mind. The mind is like the river flowing. The river will only flow where you're given it a channel to flow, isn't it? You have to channelize the mind. Only when and what channelizes the mind is the intellect. So it's intellect that channelizes the mind to flow in a particular direction. Otherwise, the mind will go helter-skelter. As the definition of the mind is asthira and chanchala. The mind runs everywhere. So it's not the mind that can conceive the transcendental. Sanjay, thank you, Ma. What is it in you that can conceive the transcendental?
Even Guru, I'm not clear what it is. I'm still thinking about it, what it might be, but I'm not clear what it is.
All right. Immediately banish Rajima from the classroom. She's banished. Ajnatavas, she has to go through 5 years of Ajnatavas to come back into the class. Rajima, enna answer adu? What is the question? What is the answer?
Guruji, what is it that can conceive the self? The small I conceives the big I. That was the small I being the ego. That was my understanding. I might be completely wrong.
No, it is not the small self, which again, when you say the small self or the ego, you're referring to the individual. Oh, you're being very generic. I'm talking about what's specific in a human. In fact, Gayatri, I'm not trying to, but right. It is the subtle intellect. It is a subtle intellect in a human that conceives the transcendental, not the intellect, Sitaramji. It is not the intellect. Why we say it is not the intellect? Because intellect has two functions. There is a gross function and a subtle function. So when the intellect, first and foremost, the job of the buddhi, the intellect, is to discriminate, as we constantly say, between right and wrong, good and bad, left and right, short and tall, etc. And it keeps discriminating. But when that discrimination is confined to the terrestrial limits, the intellect is termed gross. So when I engage my intellect in all the worldly transactions, within the worldly transactions, you are engaging what is known as a gross intellect. But when the very same intellect is employed in discriminating between only one pair, a sole pair, and the only pair the subtle intellect operates is between the entire terrestrial world on one side and the transcendental reality on the other. So when you ask this fundamental question, if I pick up this and ask, is this Brahman? As simple as that. Is this the reality? So I'm separating the world from the reality, isn't it? So the capacity to conceive the self, the transcendental reality, depends on how strong is your subtle intellect. Sitaramji, let's say a person who deals with this stock market, investments, all that market. You need to have a very sharp intellect to be able to read and predict the market, isn't it? All right. You can't operate on emotions and things. You have to be very rational,
objective,
very objective. A person may have a very sharp gross intellect to deal with those numbers and figures and stocks and how everything is operating. But if I were to bring that person, that gentleman, to this classroom, he will find like a fish out of water. He's got a sharp gross intellect, very successful, very shrewd, very acute perception he's got. Or I can go to a doctor and sit across the table and show my case to him, and he will open up my chapter of my health and read in and through what's happening with me. Brilliant doctor. I start, Om Sahana Bhavatu, he'll start dozing off. What are you talking, sir? He has no attunement of the subtle intellect. So what I'm trying to convey is, you may have a sharp gross intellect, but not necessarily a sharp subtle intellect. You can have a gross intellect and a weak, a very feeble subtle intellect. On the contrary, you could have a very strong subtle intellect and a very weak gross intellect because you are not interested in application. For example, you put me into the stock market. I wouldn't have any idea what that is. I may have no interest, but if I have to apply myself, as a matter of time, I will pick up that. One who has a sharp, subtle intellect can develop a sharp, gross intellect. But one who has a sharp, gross intellect, it's not easy to develop that acute perception of a subtle intellect. So it's also almost, in fact, both are branching out from the same intellect. Intellect is one, but the fields of operation are very, very different.
but Guruji, does it mean that the subtle intellect is innate and you cannot acquire it through knowledge?
No, that you actually, the next question perhaps you can ask is, how does one Develop the subtle intellect.
Exactly.
The subtle intellect, the tool for the subtle intellect is wisdom, is the satsang. When you come to the fold of wisdom and knowledge and engage your existing subtle intellect, let's say you have only 5% or 10% subtle intellect, but you want to enhance that. You don't want to get caught up in the quagmire of the worldly transactions. You said, I'm tired of running behind the world, acquiring and amassing and enjoying for my generations to come. Let me want to renounce the world and pick up the higher. Let's say, I don't know how much of that thought or bug is in you, that you want to renounce the lower and enjoy the higher. You want to reach the higher spiritual state. If that thought comes into you, wouldn't you want to consolidate that thought? Wouldn't you want to reinforce the thought and get established in that spirit of embracing the higher wisdom? So you will come to this fold of knowledge, just like you have come to this fold today. You'll come and you'll revisit those ideas. You'll get them refreshing. You keep analyzing, where am I going with life? What has been my priorities? What is the purpose? You keep questioning thereafter. So the influence of this knowledge will help you recast the goals, what you want to set, what you have set for yourself in life. And slowly you'll take a turn towards the higher, and you'll renounce the value. It's not that you renounce your assets and your resources. You renounce the value you have for them, because you understand what is materiality. What is this? You understand the shallowness in it when you shift your focus towards the higher. So the only way you develop the subtle intellect is by keeping yourself more exposed to these environments, to these scriptures, to these activities, so that the thought gets reinforced and strengthened. But this is only 1 hour, 15 minutes. In how many hours in a week? My maths is very poor. Huh? 24 into 7. What is 24 into 7?
188.
Less than 200 hours. In a week, there are approximately 200 hours.
188.
168. 168 hours. Out of that 1 hour, 15 minutes, you are devoting. In that 1 hour, 15 minutes, half the time mind is running helter-skelter. So how long are you devoting to this thought of the self? Ask yourself. How long? So what would happen to the intellect, subtle intellect? It remains dwarfed, isn't it? It remains dormant to a large extent. So one needs to step up the effort if you want to strengthen your intellect, so that it can give you a direction to life. It's just not mere intellectualization in a classroom like this. That is not all that matters. What matters is your mind must be kept at bay. If your intellect says, don't go there, your mind should not run behind the world. That kind of a discipline, the mind must follow what the intellect says. Now, does your mind obey what your intellect says? Does your mind still appreciate a value for the world? Still have a value for the world? You can't say Atman, Brahman in the morning and then dollars and pounds in the evening. Then what are you worshipping? What am I seeking? That clarity has to be there. You get the answer, sir? So there is a distinct difference, and this is what you'll find in your life. You will meet the most brilliant minds out there, but they will not have an acuteness to this knowledge. This is a very rational school of thought. You can meet the most brilliant intellects out there, but they will not have an attunement to the self, because their subtle intellect is
Not developed.
not developed. Brilliant in their own fields of activity, leaders of their own industry, but subtle intellect is zero. It's a different operation. And I often give an example. Those of you who recall, give an example like a spanner you use to repair a locomotive and the spanner you use to repair a wristwatch are two different things. They can't switch operations, can you? One is a subtle operation, other is a gross operation. You can't. Another example we use is an axe and a razor blade. An axe can be sharp or blunt. You use an axe to fell a tree. An axe is a gross intellect. You use a shaving blade to shave. That also can be sharp or blunt. But the operation is subtle. You can't use an axe to shave, nor do you use a sharp razor blade to fell a tree. Can you? It's a different. There are two different markets, two different operations. Okay, Ji? Right. Yes, Aparagaru.
Guruji, I would like to admit to you that I'm quite lost in whatever we discussed today or what you have told us. So, firstly, when we are talking about the transcendental reality, that word itself is quite confusing because the verbatim and vocabulary probably I'm not used to those vocabulary. And again, you have introduced a subtle intellect. Okay, we understand intellect. Subtle intellect, if I translate into our own native language, it is Sukshma Buddhi. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But I do not know the very existence of subtle intellect. So under no circumstance I would have answered you right in the earlier question. And at the same time, when you are explaining, it's outward, the gross intellect is about the materialistic world, the outer world and other things. The subtle intellect is something like, distinction between the outer and inner world. So still, I could not get the crux of what the subtle intellect is, whether I have the subtle intellect, or if I have something, what stage I am, and what should be my goal. These are the things that are coming up to my, into my mind.
I completely respect your comments, because if something you're hearing for the first time, this could be revolutionary. But it's all academic, because as you go along through the studies, it'll all become very clear. So be rest assured, you'll get these concepts on and off. But you must be assured, and what should comfort you is the fact that you're here. There is that calling within you to seek the truth. Whatever name you may call it. You may call it seeking God, seeking Brahman, seeking the reality. But there is that inner calling. You're not someone out there who is completely lost and enmeshed in the worldly transactions. There's some spiritual element in you that's calling you to seek the truth, seek the higher. Am I right? Yes. I can say with a certainty, because I met you, I know you as a person as well. So that meeting is enough to make an assessment of you. Now, to just give you a little further information, in fact, even to comment what Hariji said, Hariji is saying intellect is finite. The finite cannot conceive the infinite. We are simply throwing a statement out of context. It is right, but then it just derails everybody else. You should watchful, Hariji, what you comment there, because we're not talking of that. We are trying to now what gives the subtle intellect that acuteness to connect with the self is subtle intellect and conscience are interconnected. The conscience, as we all know, conscience is that, in fact, conscience is an aspect of a subtle intellect. So it is that element in the subtle intellect, because of the conscience. Conscience is defined as, how do you define a conscience? How have we defined the conscience? Do you remember anybody? Gayatri Ma, do you remember? how have we often defined the conscience in this classroom?
Is it awareness? Conscience?
Awareness, that is being conscious. Conscious is awareness. The conscience, we have often defined conscience in a particular way. Vasantama, I know you know. No pressure, ma.
Conscience is something which tells us the right thing to do. If it is right or wrong, whatever.
Even your intellect can tell you what is right or wrong, isn't it? How do you differentiate between the intellect and the conscience?
Conscience is mere
Subtle
witness. we have
intellect which will tell us.
Sorry, ma?
It is a subtle intellect which tells us.
No. See, conscience is an aspect of subtle intellect. Correct. That is okay. You're okay with that? Now, what is the best way we have given the definition of conscience? In fact, I think you're not wrong. Setuji, I can just, if you can just hold on, sir. I think Ashama would know. Because other day she messaged me. She said, Guruji, I have listened to your talk on the three voices within. What are the three voices within? Boliye, Ashama.
The voice of the mind, the voice of the intellect, and the voice of conscience. And how do we differentiate?
Right. Is there a question in that?
Yeah, I had asked that question.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm asking of the three C's.
So the voice of conscience, according to, what I understand is, it is your inner voice, which just like prompts you, it just tells you what is right and what is wrong. It does not say whether you should do this or not. That is the intellect that tells you what to do, what path to take.
Okay.
But this voice just tells you this is right and this is wrong.
Correct. Absolutely right. I think you all could fall back onto that talk. The talk was
8th December 2020.
Wow. So 8th December 2020, I think
And
Rajima, get hold of the talk and share it.
And
Rajima, get hold of the talk, ma.
Yeah, and that the title was The Three Voices Within.
The three voices within. Yes. So I don't recall what exactly was said there, but the three C's I talk about is your conscious, conscience, consciousness. So the three C's are, Sanjay, what are three C's?
The three C's are conscious,
Conscience,
conscience, and consciousness.
Consciousness. So the conscious is the intellect, the gross level. Conscience is the subtle intellect. Consciousness is the truth. I repeat, conscious is your gross intellect. Conscience is the subtle intellect. Consciousness is the truth, the reality, the three C's. Right. Now, just to be very clear, Aparagaru, I'm with you, sir. The conscience is an aspect of your subtle intellect, as we said. And the best description of conscience is a messenger of God. Conscience, that is how I have described it. Maybe it may not be the best definition, but conscience, Venkatamji, conscience is
Messenger from God, you're saying.
Not messenger from God. I knew you got it wrong.
God.
Messenger of God.
Of God.
What do you mean messenger of God?
In the sense, it basically alerts you or makes you walk the right path or guides you.
To the path of righteousness.
Yes.
Ultimately to the path of the truth. So the consciousness in you, the conscience in you points you to the reality. So it is a messenger of God. So, and it is that element in you gives the subtle intellect the capacity to conceive the infinite. Otherwise, intellect cannot conceive, isn't it? Hariji, this is a clarification to that point, or you made. Okay, Hariji? Otherwise, the intellect, you're right to say the intellect cannot conceive the transcendental, but yet you must be able to envision the goal of realization. And what gives that? I see the goal of self as vividly as I see you, or more vividly than I see you. So because some of them I don't see you at all. You choose to be anonymous. Never mind. So the goal of realization must be very vivid. And what makes it vivid or clear is how strong is a subtle intellect. So Paragaru, are you okay, sir?
Yes, Guruji. It's slightly making sense, and thanks that the three voices and the three C's is making me to understand to an extent.
Perfect, sir. Just fall back on that recording. It would be made available. Gayatrima, just make that link available. I think there's a video as I'm being informed, so it'll give you a little clarity on that. Okay, sir. Right. All okay, Venkatamji, or any concern? What is it, thumbs up or what?
To unmute me, na? So I said it's okay.
All okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. All right. Okay. So the verse merely states those who strive for liberation, which means the subtle intellect has to be extremely sharp. You're able to conceive the goal of realization, where from old age to death means right through the changes you're subjected through life, which is birth and death. In and through the journey of life, you are not caught up in this. You are able to get to the real purpose of life, because there are such people take refuge in me, he says, and they realize, the second half of the verse, he says, they realize in full, in entirety, what is Brahman, what is Adhyatma, which is the individual self, and karma, action. Now, what is the connection between Brahman, Atman, and karma? I tell you, if I were to take your individual opinions of what is your opinion of what God is, and what connection that God has got to do with your life, and what is the truth, what these texts are saying, it is chalk and cheese. So you got to, one of the most difficult things to do is to unlearn and relearn. So you got to do a lot of unlearning of what you have got into your head, or what is the concept of God, and what connection God has got to do with your life and my life. I almost many a time give up hope on trying to communicate the truth, because it is so brainwashed. Sometimes you can't change that. But I will still continue, because that's what the truth is. I have to say the truth. Now, Brahman, the term Brahman is talking about the reality from a macrocosmic perspective. A macrocosmic perspective is Brahman. Macro means which is manifest everywhere. the heterogeneous variety. All is enlivened by a homogeneous mass of consciousness. So the homogeneous mass of consciousness, which is enlivening all the living beings, I repeat, a homogeneous mass of consciousness. Rajima, please capture the definition. For the people, please type it out in the chat box. Okay, right. Gayatri, type it out, please. Brahman is a homogeneous mass of consciousness which enlivens the heterogeneous variety of all living beings. So you got that, Gayatri Ma? Brahman is a homogeneous mass of consciousness which enlivens the heterogeneous variety of living beings. The homogeneous means is one mass of consciousness. Heterogeneous is the various plants, the entire plant kingdom, the entire animal kingdom, and the living kingdom, all the living beings, everything. What is the common factor? Brahman is the common factor. If you see an ant crawling, what is it that enlivens the life in an ant? Brahman. If you see a bee buzzing around your ears, what is it that enlivens the bee to buzz? It is the Brahman. A glowworm glows. What enlivens the glowworm to glow? It is the Brahman. What enlivens a human? Every living being is enlivened because of the consciousness. So when you talk of that totality, we call it Brahman. Now, the second term, he says Adhyatma. Adhyatma means the individual self. Now, the same God, the same layman's term, what we call as God, the texts are giving technical terms. So the God from a macrocosmic perspective is Brahman. Gayatri, write that down. God from a macrocosmic perspective is Brahman. The same God from a microcosmic perspective is Atman. So the same God from an individual perspective becomes the Atman. Means, what is it that enlivening me? I'm speaking now. What is it that enables me to speak? I say it is the Atman. What is it that's enabling me to hear? It is the Atman. What is it that's enabling me to see? It is the Atman. What is it that enables me to feel and think? It is the Atman within. So when I'm talking of the same God with reference to an individual, it becomes the Atman. And the third term, he says, karma, action. And actions are produced because of what? Actions are produced because of your vasanas. The vasanas is also known as prakriti, the Sanskrit word for nature. Hariji has a particular nature. Annapurnama has got a particular nature. Ranganathan ji has got a particular nature. Ashram has got a particular nature. She is expressing her nature. You are expressing your nature. I am expressing my nature. What is that nature I'm expressing? What is that dharma I'm expressing? It is my own vasanas, isn't it? So the actions you perform are because of what? Vasanas. Now, simple question. Why am I doing something different vis-a-vis? Why are you doing something different? Because you have a bundle of vasanas. I have a different bundle of vasanas. The vasanas bundles are different. Now, let's take sorry, Sanjay. What does
The word was the word adhyatma. I was just
Okay.
curious to know, is there any difference between Adhyatma and just Atma? Do we just see it the same thing, or is that conditioning it in some way? Is that qualifying it in some way?
As it is translated, I think even in the translation, if you see, it is translated as the individual self. Adhya means the individual, Atma is the self. So Adhyatma means the individual self.
Is that similar to what we call the Jiva as well, the Jivatma?
Yeah, the Jivatma again is the individuality. The Jiva symbolizes the individual, but Adhyatma refers to the Atman in the individual. They're two different things. Jiva symbolizes the individuality of the ego. Sanjay is the Jiva. But the God that enlivens Sanjay is Adhyatma. All right? Perfect. Now, take a couple of examples of Brahman, Atman, Atman, and the karma. If Brahman is to be taken as the sun, S-U-N, not your S-O-N. Oh, I have got lovely sons. No, don't, for at least for this 1 hour, don't think of your sons. All you got to do is think of S-U-N for a while. Sudhakarji is very well prepared for S-U-N also. No, I know Sudhakar Garu.
I forget SONs.
Correct, I know, sir. That also I know.
I only remember SUN and Guruji.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So yeah. No. Please, it suits you well. I know after the surgery. Please wear, sir. No problem. I can understand.
Recently, I got cataract surgery.
No. Please. Understand it. Understand. I'm aware of that. Don't use this excuse and start putting shades in the class, huh? Yeah. Okay, right, sir. So the S-U-N, if sun is the Brahman, the sun rays is the Atman, the reflections of the sun are the actions. I can, Aparagaru, don't worry, sir, if you're confused. None of them in the class understand it. Even I also partly understand it. So all of us in the same boat. Just raskondi. One day we all will understand it together. And the day I understand, I'll teach you fully, sir. Because the mantra says, only a wise soul understands in full, realizes in full. So we are not wise completely. So it'll take some understanding to get there. Now, what you must understand, the first, I go back to the example again. Brahman is the sun rays or the heat, and put all together. Sun rays is the Atman, and the reflections are the actions. Now, my simple question is, when do you find a reflection? Where do you find a reflection of the sun? You don't find reflection of the sun in an opaque surface, do you? No. You get the reflection of a sun where there's a reflecting medium, isn't it? Wherever there's a medium, the sun reflects. And the reflection of the sun takes the medium or qualities of the reflecting medium. Am I right? I'll go back again slowly. The sun is the Brahman. The sun's rays is the Atman. The reflections are the actions. The sun rays are everywhere, but the reflections come only where there's a reflecting medium. Point one. And the reflections are attributed to the quality of the medium. If the glass is red, the sun appears red. If the mirror is blue, the reflection appears blue. If the so on and so forth. I don't want to expand further. You got the point. Now, draw the connection to the philosophy. What is difficult to follow here is the reflections. The reflections is the vasanas. Atman reflects only where there is vasanas, only where there is subtle matter, which is grass body and castle body. Now I know it's not like rocket science now, isn't it? That's the beauty of the text. I can't help it. I got to spell it out. I'll repeat it. The reflections refers to the vasanas. Vasanas, wherever there are vasanas, there are actions, isn't it? As I said, you have a set of vasanas, I have a set of vasanas. So the Brahman, which is everywhere, comes through the individual and operates through us through actions. The type of actions I perform is based on my vasanas, which is my dharma, right? The karmas I perform, the actions I perform is based on my vasanas. Now, let's say, now you all see at the table behind me here. You all see the table? Now I ask you this question, is God there in this table? You will say, yes, sir. I suppose God is everywhere, isn't it? God is all pervading. Isn't it? It's everywhere. But then why isn't there any life in this table? Ah, my knuckles are hurting. Why isn't there life in the table? Siddharamanji, why isn't there life in the chair you're sitting? You may say, sir, that's your table. How do I know? Therefore, I'm making it easier for him to answer. The chair you're sitting also has no life, sir.
There is
no Atman.
Atman is there.
Just now I said Atman is there, no? Atman is everywhere. Sun rays are everywhere. But reflection happens only when there's a reflecting medium, isn't it?
No vasanas.
So the reflecting medium we said is the vasanas. Now, what is absent in a table and a chair?
Life.
Life. Why? No, correct. The question is, why is it there no life?
There's no vasanas.
And what is a vasana? I said vasana is subtle matter, and subtle matter is your subtle body and causal body.
This has no causal body.
It has no subtle body also.
Body. Only gross.
It only has gross body. Once you get it, I tell you, you got it. You got the crux, you got the bull by the horns. Atman is everywhere, but it only manifests only where there is subtle matter. Now, therefore, now please write down, life equals life is an expression of Atman. Atman plus gross matter plus subtle matter. Now, what is gross matter? Gross matter is your gross body. Subtle matter is your subtle body, which is your mind, right? Subtle matter constitutes of subtle body, which is your mind and intellect, plus the causal body, which is the vasanas. Ushama, I hope you're following. UK. I understand why you're unable to put on your video, but I hope you're following now. Okay.
Yes, Guruji, very much. But it needs a lot of contemplation, Guruji.
I told already, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah. Yes, Guruji.
Wonderful. All right. So, now I want you all to, now you know why there is no life in inert objects. Shashikanji, now with what I have said, can you tell what is the equation of inert matter? Inert matter is your table, chair, all the fittings and furniture. There's no life in them, isn't it? They are lifeless.
That is gross.
It is gross. But what is the definition of inert matter?
Which you do not have a life, right?
Correct. But what is there in that? I'm looking at two definitions here, sir. One is a definition of inert matter, another definition of living being. This will help us understand the last aspect of actions. This is what I'm trying to explain. Okay. So the first thing I'm looking at is what is your, based on what I have typed out, I've actually given the equation of life.
Exactly.
Now I want you to give a definition of inert matter.
Inert matter do not have a life.
Correct. No, I agree with you. It is lifeless. But what does it constitute?
It also constitutes, yes.
What does it constitute?
It constitutes. Little tough.
No problem. Sir, at least you tell me, Shashikanji, please tell me what constitutes life. What did you write down?
Life constitutes Atman plus gross matter plus subtle matter.
Perfect. Your understanding is correct. Now,
the gross matter is the gross body.
Correct. So let's say if I were to, let's say I show this to you. You see this Nandi?
Yes, yes.
This has a certain characteristics. Am I right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Then I show you this ear pod. These have certain characteristics, isn't it?
Different, yes.
There is a different characteristics. So that matter has a certain characteristics, isn't it?
Common, yes.
It has a certain matter, gross matter. Now, what else is common in these two? What is common in the two?
What is common in this two?
Atman.
Okay.
Isn't there God everywhere?
Common, yes, yes.
God is there, plus it has got gross matter. No doubt it has different characteristics. It has got matter, isn't it?
Exactly.
So the definition of inert matter is, Sanjay, what's the definition of inert matter?
Then that means that inert matter is Atman minus subtle matter.
Don't minus anything, plus solungo.
Oh.
Don't minus anything, say plus. What? Atman plus?
Atman plus gross matter.
That's it. Perfect. Atman plus gross matter is inert matter. Inert objects, all inert objects, including your dead body. Including a dead body. When you see a dead body also is inert, lifeless, isn't it? Now, this is difficult to accept, but Venkatramji, even in a dead body, what is the equation?
Even in a dead body, there is Atman and gross matter.
How do you say Atman is there?
God is there everywhere. We are saying Atman is there everywhere.
Therefore, Atman has to be there, isn't it?
Yes.
But then why does a person die?
The subtle matter is not there.
Is absent. Subtle matter is not there. When the subtle matter, and what subtle matter?
Subtle matter is mind and intellect plus the causal body, vasanas.
Which is the vasanas. So the mind and intellect and the vasanas are responsible for?
Are responsible for life.
Now, okay, you please don't take back your words. Huh? Now I ask you, what's the definition of life?
Life is Atman plus gross matter plus subtle matter.
Yes. Now, what was the question I just asked you?
You said, what is there in a dead body? Then I said, the dead body will have Atman plus the gross matter. And
my question is, what is responsible for your actions?
Vasanas.
Correct. What is responsible for your actions is not the Atman, it is your subtle matter, which constitutes of subtle body and causal body. I hope you're all able to find the way I'm approaching and what I'm trying to convey here. Now, what is the conclusion you would come to? That Atman or Brahman and Adhyatma has got nothing to do with your Venkatramji, still with you. Brahman and Atman have got nothing to do with your
Vasanas.
With your actions.
Actions.
The three things we are examining is Brahman, Adhyatma, and action.
Actions.
The actions are being performed not because of Brahman, not because of Atman, because of Vasanas. If it is because of Brahman and Atman, then everything must function. No. There is no life everywhere. Atman is everywhere, but life is not everywhere. Life is only in living beings. And what is the difference between a living being, inert matter, is there is subtle matter. Subtle matter makes all the difference. As I said, sunlight is everywhere, but reflections happen only where there's a reflecting medium. Now, what you will have to conclude I will not conclude, but at least conclude for now, is Atman and Brahman has got nothing to do with your actions. God has got no interest in you. God has got nothing to do with you. God is a pure enlivening witness. So the first example was of the sun, the rays and reflections. The second example, I said I'll give two examples. I'll mention it. I'll come back again, catch you all fresh next week. The second example, take a note. The electric supply from the main grid. The main electric supply from the grid is Brahman. That's the master source. And the electricity that gets supplied into your apartment or your unit or your home is Atman. And the electricity that comes into each gadget that's hooked onto the plugs, everything is enlivened. Like right now, around me, the air condition is there, the spotlight ahead of me is there, the tube light is on, the laptop is on, everything around me is bristling with activity. There's life in it. The electricity in the grid and the electricity in my house is the same, isn't it? The God in the macrocosm and the God in the microcosm is the same. It's just a language, please. Not that God in my house, sorry, the electricity in my house is little inferior to the electricity in the grid. The same electricity. It's a language difference. Now, why is there a different expression? Rajima, why is there, okay, Rajima, hold on, please. Annapurnama, I ask you, why is there a different expression, even though the electricity is the same? Why is there a different expression of air conditioning, a different expression of refrigeration, a different expression of a heater, of a different expression in a television? Electricity is the same.
Hari Om Guruji. Just like in the things with life, like human beings, according to one's vasanas, the actions happen. So just like that, in inert objects also, when the power enters them, according to their utility, it performs.
According to its unique characteristics, isn't it?
Unique. Yes.
Unique characteristics of matter, there's different expressions, isn't it?
Yes.
But now I ask you, has electricity got anything to do with refrigeration or heater?
Not at all, Guruji. I mean, it
do you supply different electricity in winter to your heater and different electricity for the air conditioning in summer?
No, Guruji, it's the same. It enables.
It just enables. The same electricity produces heat in one, cold in another, but electricity has got nothing to do with the heat or the cold. And yet they cannot be heat or cold without electricity. Therefore, wonderful, Ma. Now, please don't switch off your video. I feel inspired seeing and talking. Huh? Right. Now, please write down this definition. One of the best definitions of God is with it, everything happens. Without it, I repeat, the best definitions of God, if at all you can capture in an intellectual way, with it, everything happens. Without it, nothing happens. Yet, it has got nothing to do with the happening. With it, everything happens. Everything is functioning because of electricity. Without electricity, nothing functions. But electricity has got no damn thing to do with what I plug in and how it operates, isn't it? It doesn't care what you put in. Electricity is the same. The Atman is the same. With it, everything is happening. Without it, nothing happens. Imagine the Atman switches off for a while, all of us will be drop dead. It is a life-giving principle. That gives life is Atman. With it, everything happens. Without it, nothing happens. Yet Atman has got nothing to do with what you do, nothing to do with the happening. So therefore, a wise man understands in full, in entirety, in Akhilam. Akhilam is the entire connection between Brahman, Adhyatma, and Karma. It is such an intricate subject matter, such an intricate matter. You got to, it's like you're trying to put a needle, a thread through the needle blindfolded. So difficult. Blindfolded, you're trying to put a thread through the needle. I give you a chance, a luck. How difficult to explain it in the way we are without the remoteness of this whole satsang makes it far more challenging. But at least we have captured it. You can fall back on it, review it again. I will come back and clarify. But looks like Aparav Garu is not letting me go. Chapan sir. Yes, sir, Aparav Garu.
1 second, sir.
Yes.
Guruji, we have, Shankaracharya said that Aham Brahmosmi. So when he says that Aham Brahmosmi, I am Brahman. So, and we understand that the Brahman is all supreme, which is giving us a source of light, everything. So, and how, when Shankaracharya says Aham Brahman, how can someone be everything?
See, when a self-realized person claims, asserts that experience of becoming the truth, such a person proclaims Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. What it only means is the individuality of the jiva, the individuality and the assertive ego, the aham bhava of I and my ceases to exist. There is no more I and my. So there is no more Mr. Aparav. Now, going by the definition, sir, Aparav equals the God in you, the Godhood in you, plus your physical body, plus your vasanas, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, when would Aparav become God? When the desires or the vasanas are no more. So the equation of self is man minus vasanas equals God. That's the definition of Godhood, is when one has got rid of his vasanas or desires. Now, what is that state of becoming that oneness with the truth is an experience which I have to experience it. You will have to experience it. But all what we can at this point is never doubt that proclamation of these great men when they say Aham Brahmasmi. There's so much truth in it. In fact, there's far greater truth in that than anything else you've ever known. We just have to mature to understand that grand experience. So I'll only say, when you are asleep, when you are dreaming, you do not know. Sir, let's say Aparav sleeps tonight and you go through dream. So as a dreamer, does the dreamer know the actual asset And what is the worth, what's the value, and who's Aparav?
No. He doesn't know.
Impossible to know. A dreamer would not know who is Aparav and what is worth.
Yes.
Whatever you may worth be, but he has no idea who Aparav is, first of all. So who will know Aparav? Aparav will know Aparav. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you will know who you are. So it's impossible to communicate to the dreamer who Aparav is. And who is talking? Aparav himself is talking to the dreamer. Array, you know who you are. You're not that fellow whom you think you are dreaming. You're suffering in the dream. You are not that person. You're well placed in life. Don't worry. Why are you suffering? You are Aparav. You know, I am talking to you. You say, oh, is it? You speak very well, sir, but I still don't understand. Exactly the same way. These masters, when they speak the truth to us, we don't understand that you are the self. You are not yourself whom you think you are. So you think yourself to be someone. I think myself to be someone. They're saying you are not who you think you are. You are the truth. You are the self. And this truth that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you're not the intellect, you are yourself, has to be pounded constantly so that you will start believing yourself to be the self. And one day, that belief becomes a reality, where Aparo will go about telling, Aham Brahmasmi. This is the journey, and that's the state where these men have proclaimed the truth. Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, sir. We'll come back. Namaskar. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.